We did.
I don't see him here.
With the time being 7:35, I'd like to call the Planning and Development Committee to order on this beautiful Monday night of August the 16th. Just for the heck of it, just, can we have a roll call, please? For the record, I'm sorry.
Signage.
Here.
Bella.
Here.
Leitner. Here. Baumgart.
Here.
Bancroft.
Here.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Trulli.
Here.
Werba.
Here.
Fessner.
Here.
Weber.
Here. All right, with item 4A, we have the Planning Commission. We're going to get a presentation for Alter Brewing signage.
Good evening. Doug Walklister, on behalf of Alter Brewing, has filed an application for a special use for 2 canvas covers with text and logo for their outdoor container bar. These are the 2 covers that were up all winter, but they are now coming in to the committee for formal approval. On July 7th, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the proposed PUD amendment and voted 4-1 approval of the application with the condition that a time frame for the covers, for when the covers can be installed, correlate to the 180-day time frame that the tent can be erected, and the applicant was agreeable to that request. The Plan Commission also reviewed the special use and held a public hearing on July 20th and voted 6-0 to recommend approval. And with that, I'll turn it over to the committee for any questions.
Is there any questions in regards to the signage? No? With that, I'll need a motion and a second.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Bessner and seconded by Werball. Let's just have a roll call on that.
Baumgart.
Abstain.
I'm sorry, Baumgart.
I'm abstaining.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bancroft.
Yes.
Lencioni.
Yes.
Trulli.
Yes.
Werba.
Yes.
Fessner.
Yes.
Signage.
Yes.
Bella.
Yes.
Leitner.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Next, we have a presentation in regards to the Crystal Loft PUD. Go ahead, Russell.
Yes, good evening. Back in June, staff updated the committee regarding the Crystal Lofts PUD, which was set to expire that month. The property has been in a partially demolished state for an extended period, which has generated some complaints and concerns from neighbors. The property owner informed the city the PUD project would not be moving forward as presented. However, they requested some additional time to address the condition of the property, and the committee granted the owner 60 days and requested a status update at the August P&D meeting. As of August 6th, a complete permit application has been filed to repair and finish the building exterior, and the architectural plans are included in the packet. So at this point, given that the owner's made a permit submittal, it would be appropriate to grant another 60-day extension, or alternately, the committee could direct staff to initiate the code enforcement process and issue a notice of violation based on the site conditions. Additionally, there was a letter received from the Historic Preservation Commission, and the chair, Kim Millay, is present. Jeff Funk, representing the ownership, is on Zoom and can respond to questions for the owner.
Thank you, Russell. Questions, comments?
I just had one question. I had driven out there, I believe, last Monday prior to what I thought was going to be our meeting. And, you know, I have no problems granting a 60-day extension if that's what we're looking at, 60 or 90 days. The one thing I would say is please let them know that there's some doorways that are wide open. There's some gaps in the fence, and it just doesn't look safe. The fencing looks like it's pretty solid, but there's a few points where you could literally walk in and out of there. And then there's also 2 or 3 doorways that are just wide open, no doors, nothing, and it just seems unsafe.
I'll let ownership know.
Go ahead, Werball.
What is the time frame to complete this project? Is there an estimated time frame?
Well, the first phase is masonry restoration, which is going to take approximately 4 to 5 weeks. And then we're overlapping with, we have windows on site. The windows, we're looking at about 2 to 3 weeks to install. And then we're doing, there's some structural repairs on the interior with a new roof, which is approximately 2 weeks. So we're looking at about 2 months.
Okay, I have a follow-up. Back in June, the concern was getting funding to complete this project? Is the funding there to complete the project or move it forward in a timely
There
manner?
is. Yes, and that's why we waited to submit for permits. So we submitted for permits, I believe like a week and a half ago. So the funding is there and they do have subcontractors that are ready to begin.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Rita.
Yeah. Russ, can you tell me the time? I mean, we visited this in June, and then it was a 60-day at that point. Where did the August 6th come in that 60 days?
So the 60 days, I think it fell the week after the P&D meeting, so I think it was this week.
Okay.
So it did come in within the 60-day time period.
Okay. And my understanding was at the time that the windows were purchased and just had a matter of popping them in. I mean, it sounded simplified, but that's what the gentleman had said. But now it sounds like there's a little more entailed to...
Yes, I think the work is a little more complicated.
Than just popping in
Than
windows?
just popping the windows in, but the owner's representative can comment.
Okay.
We actually had a structural engineer that went out there because we wanted to get assessment of the existing building. And we provided that structural report to the city. And we addressed those corrections, basically in the drawings. We addressed all the comments that the structural engineer had, and we're including those in the permit drawing. So the last thing we needed to begin work is the permit for the building.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted an update on the work, because I know when we last met, we were at a standstill, and we were just asking for, like, hey, get to the right point. And I appreciate that the permit's in, that work has happened, but can you give me an update? What is the status change between what all was done? The fence is new. What are all the things that have been done between the 60-day extension and now?
Well, it was really getting the drawings done, getting the drawings completed, getting the structural report, and raising the money to start the first phase. So,
are there any changes on the site?
As far as anything, no, we've just been maintaining, just mowing taking care of the lawn and what have you. No, there have not been any changes to the site. We don't have a permit to do work out there.
Oh, that's a fair argument.
Go ahead, Warbo.
What is the intent? Is it to finish this off completely the way the picture is, or is it just to get into a condition to sell the property?
Well, it's both. Right now, it's when I say both, it's to get it to what the picture looks like, which is the first phase. We have the windows on site, which were purchased there, and then the balance of the work is the masonry work, the roofing, and get it to a point to where we can get, from my understanding, from what the owner told me, is that they want to get it to a point to where they could raise more money and, bring it to the next phase, which is, either they're talking about doing industrial storage or some sort of car condo concept. But that would be later. Right now, we just want to get it to the point to, utilize the windows that have been purchased, which are, in the tune of $225,000, and balance of the work, which is they've got about $450,000 worth of money that they raised to do the masonry work, to do the roofing, to do the structural repairs, and to get it to a point to where you can actually bring people in there and make them feel comfortable with the building.
Okay, thank you.
Brian Bogart, you have a question?
So the concern the last time this came around was the state of the building. Like, we understood the hardships with COVID and, why the year was granted. So just to be clear, nothing has changed with the physical state of the building, the fence, the windows, some of the doors being open. Nothing has changed there in the last 60 days. All that's changed is now we've submitted a plan for what we plan on doing moving forward. But the state of the building, which I gather is where a lot of the initial concern came the last time around. But just to be clear, nothing there has changed.
This is correct, right?
Okay.
Go ahead, Rita.
And clarity, more to Alderman Lencioni's point too. The first phase, will the fence be down once the? I'm just thinking of the Go ahead.
Once the construction is complete for the first, yeah, in our permit, we have a fence that we're going to install. So we're going to get the building to a point, to cleaned up to a point to what the picture looks like. And then we're going to install a fence on a transparent fence on the south side and the west side, and a solid fence on the north side.
Okay, I guess I was more referring to the chain link that's up there now.
That will be gone, right? Once all the
Okay.
construction is done on the exterior, correct?
In 60 days, that fence will be gone.
Well, if we don't receive permits for 3 weeks, then, I mean, it's gonna take us 4 to 5 weeks to complete the masonry and get the windows installed. So we need to get permits to begin the work.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
I'm going off what Rita said. How long will it take to get a permit from them?
So the review is typically 2 weeks.
And that's assuming there's no,
Yes, assuming a complete submittal.
so it could still be months before we see anything, potentially.
It could still be maybe a month before the permit's issued if there needs to be revisions.
But according to the developer, they're ready to start construction as soon as they get the permit. Is that what I heard?
Yes, I believe that's what he said.
That is
Thank you.
correct.
Go ahead, Brian.
Regarding the funding, just for clarity, you have funding for phase 1, but not phase 2, is that correct?
Well, phase 1 is getting to the, see the picture that you see there. Phase 1 is completing that work, right? So we do not have funding for phase 2, which would be the interior build outs, right? So phase 1 is taking care of the exterior of the building, getting the shell and core completed, restored and completed, getting the windows installed, and I'm getting a fence around the property, getting a gravel, lot in the property, getting the property cleaned up. And for phase 2 of the portion would be, build outs of the interior, getting, depending on which way the owner wanted to go, it would be building that out for prospective tenants.
Okay, thank you.
So, based on everything that's been discussed, they're looking to either grant a further extension or pursue, issuing a notice of violation. So we're gonna have to someone's gonna have to make a motion to give an extension, or?
Well, I have one more question for staff. The issuance of violation, what does that mean for the developer? Can you explain that?
So it would require that the property be brought into compliance with the property maintenance code. So that could be done in a number of ways. I mean, the building could be boarded up and secured. The building could be demolished. Or alternately, the developer could proceed in a timely manner with the project that they're proposing. But it'd be a little more difficult if we were in a situation where we'd issue them a violation notice, because they would be compelled to take action sooner than perhaps they can execute the project.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to grant a 60-day
Extension.
Extension. Thank you very much.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Nay, yeah, could you call a roll on that, Mr. Chairman, please?
Can I have a roll call, please?
Baumgart,
No.
Bancroft,
Yes.
Lencioni,
Yes.
Trillo,
Yes.
Wirball,
Yes.
Bessner,
Yes.
Silkaitis,
No.
Paulo,
Yes.
Payleitner.
No.
The extension is granted. Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Next, we have the zoning map amendment, the PUD for 1023 West Main Street. I just want to say, I know there's going to be, the next couple topics, there's going to be a lot of public comment. When you do step up to the microphone and make a public comment for or against the topic, please state your name and address. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a Plan Commission recommendation to approve a zoning map amendment, special use for planned unit development, and PUD preliminary plan for 1023 West Main Street. The property is located at the southeast corner of West Main Street and South 11th Street. A gas station has operated there for perhaps as early as the 1920s. The property is zoned residential, and zoning approvals are needed to redevelop the site as for continued use as a gas station. The property owner, Mohammed Sahid Ali, is requesting approval of rezoning to the BL Local Business District, as well as a PUD to accommodate deviations from certain zoning setbacks and landscaping standards. Proposed is a 1,400 square foot convenience store with a 1-bedroom apartment on the 2nd story. Also a new canopy with 3 fuel pumps and 4 other parking stalls, and proposes to retain the 3 existing site driveways. The committee did see a concept plan for this last fall. Plan Commission held a public hearing on August 3rd and voted 6-1 to recommend approval, subject to resolution of outstanding staff comments. Neighboring residents did comment during the hearing and provided written comments in your packet. Concerns were expressed regarding impacts to the adjacent neighborhood due to the scale of the proposal, traffic, and the residential unit. There was one dissenting vote from the commission who expressed a concern with the number and extent of zoning deviations being requested for the project. Now, regarding traffic, HLR Engineering reviewed the applicant's traffic memo on behalf of the city. Proposed, as I said, is to retain the 3 site driveways, 2 on Main Street and the 1 on 11th Street. The proposal is to add signage and pavement markings to indicate that the western Main Street drive would be one-way in, and then the eastern Main Street drive would be one-way out. And then the 11th Street drive would remain 2-way. HLR has expressed safety concerns stemming from the number and the width of the existing driveways, as well as the proximity of the western Main Street drive to the corner. Also concerned with a lack of physical separation between the public sidewalk and the internal vehicle circulation. This project will require a permit from IDOT, and IDOT has yet to review the proposal. So there is potential that IDOT could change the driveways or as a condition of the permit. So in terms of steps moving forward in light of the outstanding IDOT review, the committee could discuss the project, but then continue the item to a future P&D meeting pending IDOT review. Or it could be granted a conditional approval and advance to council once IDOT review is complete. Regardless, it would be beneficial for the committee to provide input on the site access, such as whether the driveway should be narrowed or reduced in number, and that could be added into the PUD approval. The property owner is present, and I believe Eric Carlson, his consultant, would like to address the committee as well.
That's fine, thank you very much.
And I can take any questions as well.
Questions, comments right now? Do you want to get a presentation first?
Yeah, presentation.
We can move forward with the presentation from the petitioner.
Hello, thank you. My name is Eric Carlson. I'm the architect with the project, working with Mr. Ali, the owner. I'm going to just be fairly brief with, I can go into more details as needed, but I did want to mention that our preference would be, the owner's preference would be a conditional approval while we work with IDOT and staff as opposed to a continuance, although either is fine, but the preference would be for that. One of the concerns I know is the drives and the 3 drives, and the owner's idea behind that is, understand that we're going to go to IDOT and they may change those, the widths or something, but we're going to try to work with them and maintain the 3 because we believe that the 3 access points is still more safe than the 2 because you're going to have quick in and out traffic off of North Avenue. We're changing the site flow to be one way from west to east, so everything will come in on the west side and exit on the east side. So our thought is that if you're bringing people into that first access point, then they can cycle through that site, and the patrons coming from North Avenue will come in, stop, get their gas, and exit that easterly drive, as opposed to forcing them on 11th Street, because the site only works with one-way flow. So if we close that westerly drive, you're forcing everybody to come in off of North Avenue on 11th and then through the site, as opposed to just a few that might go that way. So we think that would impede the neighbors more so than if we do make the change. So that's the one comment I'll make about the access points. I want to also just reiterate that the apartment at this point is for the manager of the store, which Ali Shahid's son is going to help manage the store. He's autistic, so it's kind of a learning thing for him to help kind of introduce him into some business and you know, just grow that way. But ultimately, it's a manager apartment. It's not necessarily for rent. That's all I have for now, but I am available for additional questions now or after comments.
Any questions right now at this point? Go ahead, Brian.
Two questions. The fuel pumps are located 16 feet from Main Street, and they're supposed to be 20 feet. Is there any safety concern on that from, you know what I'm saying? You're getting closer to the street. I mean, that concerns me a little bit. And then the canopy is set back 6 feet from Main Street instead of 10 feet. So those concern me a little bit. Has there been any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we more or less put the pump islands where they were previously in order to get flow on both sides. It's tight that way. So we've kind of maintained that same traffic pattern that the site has always been. We're kind of pinched on both sides of that. The building is pretty narrow as is.
Right. Other question I have is the dumpster setback. It's going to be a foot away from 11th Street. Is that my understanding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a nice looking dumpster. If you look at the rendering, it's got a kind of a pergola over the top of it, and it's the masonry that matches the building. So it's a little bit of a step up from what you would typically see.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bessler, go ahead.
So referring to the unit, you had stated that there's no intentions to ever lease or rent that out?
I don't know if I can say ever. I'm not owning it, but the initial intent is for the son. I don't know if he would convert it to just gas station storage. If and when that manager doesn't occupy it, that would be a question for Mr. Ali, but I can certainly have him come up and address that.
Yeah, and I know I asked this question the last time about the environmental side of living, you know, almost on top of a gas station, I guess in this case. But there are some studies, or at least in Illinois, where they suggest you should be at least 50 feet from a gas station. So I guess that's why I'm asking if, you know, I don't want to say there should be any hazard posed to anybody in the immediate family or people that want to live there, but at the same time, I don't know about renting or leasing out to other folks to live above a gas station if it's not safe. You know, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously the technology on tanks and the monitoring and all of that has increased significantly over the years.
Sure.
Even in the last, since 2017, there's been some improvements in that. So it's all made to try to, you know, take away the challenges that have been in the past, you know, with the leaky tanks. There's so many different parameters involved, multi-layer underground tanks and the systems, the alarm systems that are all attached to that now. They don't vent it out like they used to through the vent pipes. It's all handled within the unit itself now. So they've taken care of a lot of those challenges that were called out in those studies.
Okay, well, I guess the question would be, if not tonight, at some point, if there is an intention to lease to other occupants in that facility, in that unit. I mean, like a direct answer.
Yeah, I'll have to have Mr. Shahid come up.
Hello, everyone. For the record, my name is Muhammad Ali. I am the trustee for that site. That site is in the name of my son. He is the sole beneficiary of the site. The main intent, as Mr. Eric has pointed out, that my son being autistic, we're trying to have a livelihood for him where he can stay in the unit and run his own business there. That is the main intent. It's not, if you look at the cost involved in here with the entire permitting and cleanup, the site is already, from a cost-benefit perspective, we are more in cost than benefit out of that site.
Sure.
It's just a livelihood kind of a deal that we are trying to establish in there. And with the revision of if you have looked at the previous presentation of the site, how it was, and based on your feedback, we changed a lot, and that's increasing the cost of our overall development as well. So from an infrastructure perspective, it will be all new infrastructure, fully approved by the state marshal and the IPA. We should not have any pollution requirements in there or gaps in there.
But you have no intentions of leasing out to other occupants?
Right now, no. As long as I own it, I won't.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. Well, I have several concerns I'd like to bring up.
Sure.
I counted 13 variances for this property here. That's a lot of variances for any kind of development to ask for. I can't support all those variances. And right now it's zoned residential because we reverted to that after 6 months of non-use. I'm okay with the gas station, like the way it used to be for many years. I understand that. I have no problem with the gas station. Most of the letters I've read are okay with it. Not all of them, but most of them are. As I said, with the GHA engineers, safety was a very concern to them, and I don't think it was addressed by you. I know where that area is. I know the sidewalk and the driveway. There is no difference there. The biggest problem I have is the residential above the gas station. I cannot support that. That's something that we've never done, and I don't see a reason to do it in this situation. I'm not in favor of residential above any kind of commercial business unless it's downtown where it's zoned for. This is not zoned for this. And then parking is going to be a concern. The way it's presented tonight, I cannot support the proposal. There's too many residents who brought up valid points from the letters I read. Say a gas station would be fine, but not the residential, and the variances would have to be, we're always willing to grant some variances, but not 13 that I found. So the way it's presented now, I cannot support this project.
The variances are kind of with the property and any development on the property. There's going to be, you can't really do anything on the property. We've looked at just even residential, we've looked at several different things, and there's really not much that you can do that isn't going to require a variance.
And I understand that, but 13 variations, I'd have trouble supporting that many variations for any project. Just to make something fit, that doesn't really, in my opinion, belong there. I'm only speaking for myself. I can't speak for the rest of my council members here.
Yeah. No, I understand there are a lot, but again, it's a lot of the challenges. That's part of the hardships are what variations are about, and there's hardships that are in the property, inherent in the size and the setbacks, and all of that are inevitable for any development. So we have just tried to maintain what's there and was there, and try to enhance it a little bit more than what was there as far as the aesthetics of the city, the overall. The site is what it is, and it's not a great explanation, but it's just a tight site that won't fit a whole lot of anything. So we've tried to take what we've had and enhance that from what we can. We've added some landscaping, we've made better parking, we've made a nicer looking building, we've enhanced the canopies, the site in general. There's more landscaping on our proposed site than there is on the current site. The parking is better on this proposed site than it is on the previous site. So I think in some cases we've made enhancements even though there's variations, but I do understand what you're saying.
Lindsay, one of your questions, go ahead.
Yes, you know what, when you talk about the canopies, there was and it was hard to tell, but as it was written, there were some concerns about sightlines and encroaching sightlines. And just by the pictures that we have, the canopies look bulky, they look big. Can you help me understand the sightline obstructions that were discussed?
I believe the sightline obstruction was in regards to the monument sign or the pylon sign that was on the corner?
Okay, that was in regards to the monument side. It didn't come across clearly. So it was only in regard to the monument side, because that property has never had the canopies. The canopy, it was a big canopy. So I must have misread that part. But since we're making comments too, there were some concerns that I had, with some of the variants that were asked for, and I want to tell you the basis of my concerns. If you take a look at there are only 2 of our districts that allow live-abouts. So you have BL, and then you have CBD2. Those are the only 2 commercial districts that allow any kind of live-above. Neither of those 2 business districts, neither of those zoning districts allow for gas station. Gas station, fuel station, it isn't included in any of the live-above zones, which is important to me, because both of those districts are either very local or they're transitional. In fact, if you take a look at the BL, it makes a large point at the end of the statute to say that we have to be incredibly careful with BL to ensure that there's adequate access, parking, screening provided so that it doesn't negatively impact adjoining residential neighborhoods. And the thing that I think about when that is it's incredibly important to have, good transition between residential districts and commercial uses. But I mean, we know that this is tight. The building has been back on that corner, pushed back for a very long time. And I appreciate trying to make sure that it works and it's convenient to, combine living with a business, but it's also the residents of the neighborhood have a reason to expect, a lesser intense use. And in my judgment, I'm inclined to support, the concept of zoning, which still they don't really let much they don't leave room for live above, and I think that they make some pretty good arguments in the zoning for it not to go that way. I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I really am supportive of making a good turn and figuring out the right way to use that property. And I know, maybe creative ways to find additional space. It's going to be a challenge for sure, as you try and make something that can work for you, which I hope you can. But just to provide my comment, the live above scenario is something I'm probably not in favor of.
Alderman Petrillo, go ahead.
Sure. To kind of dovetail off your comments as well, I agree. But I also, other than Chicago, I would guess, are there any other suburban locations that you're aware of where they have this scenario above a gas station or a residential unit above a gas station?
As I've seen, it's a lot of common stuff in Chicago where this has been found. Okay. But there are a couple of suburbs when I did the research, but I don't have those names right now. But there are a few in the old town neighborhood suburbs that kind of have this kind of accommodations.
Go ahead, Alderman Bongard.
Is there an interest in moving forward if the residential is not included?
We can certainly look at the options, because based on the review we had with the Planning Commission and yours, everybody was comfortable with the residential unit. Right, the building height is still the same. Mm-hmm. If there's a vast majority of objections on it, we can convert it into a storage area like Mr. Rick has said, or kind of like an office for the business up there, the bathroom in it. That's all we can do.
Is there any more questions from the council? Go ahead, Borbal.
Yeah, I just want to echo some of my colleagues' comments about the second-story apartment, and a lot of residents have concerns about it. One in particular is Linda Brink. I guess she wrote a letter last October. She lives directly behind it, speaking about blocking her view and all of that stuff with the two-story gas station. So, with that, I don't support an apartment above the gas station. A modest gas station I would be okay with.
Thank you.
The new structure, if you have looked at the new presentation, she still has visibility to the North Avenue traffic when you look from the angle. I'm not sure I'm bringing up the whole picture in there, but she does. if you look at the picture right behind, that's her property. So she would still have access to the North Avenue view.
Sure. Thank you.
Is that it for questions from the council? Now I'm going to turn it over to public comment. If anybody would like to come up and talk about this, feel free. State your name and your address. No public comment on this topic?
My name is Mike Folks. I've commented on this before in previous meetings, and I feel I need to comment on it again. They're trying to put too much on such a small parcel lot. If an upstairs apartment is considered safe for the general public, then I think it's unsafe for the general public. I think it should be considered unsafe for your family. Parking is an issue. I think the pumps should only have 2 pumps instead of 3. I've been there. I've lived in our house 47 years. I've seen 4 cars in there before with the 2 pumps, and I just kind of laugh to myself and say, how are they going to get out of there? And when you think of a convenience store where he's selling different things, lottery tickets, coffee to commuters in the morning, and he can only get 4 parking spots, getting in and out of there is going to be quite the hassle. And if you look at other establishments on Main Street, the 7-Eleven just up, they have 15 to 17 parking lots. The 7-Eleven gas station on Randall and 64 has a lot of parking for that in and out, the quick stuff, the lottery tickets, the cigarettes, bread, milk, stuff like that. I think you shouldn't allow a second story on the building. I think the gas station should be reduced in size to fit in proportion to the size of the lot. I don't think those are unreasonable requests, and I hope you feel the same way too.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Brian Gebhardt, Gebhardt. I reside at 17 South 11th Street. And, I want to echo my neighbor Mike's comments. And, several times it's been mentioned that this was a gas station since the 1930s. And, as kind of a compromise, I think most of us are fine with a more modest gas station. However, if we look from the Shell station that's on 3rd Street to Randall Road, there are 3 gas stations there. There's Costco not very far from there. Why do we need another gas station? Those other 3 gas stations are not as, as close to the residential areas as this one would be. And if we look at the plans, particularly the fueling plans where we have a fuel truck backing down 11th Street, it's very concerning. There are kids in the neighborhood. This is so close to the neighborhood, and given the current size, we have a lot of concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments from the public or from the council? I do not see any. Would anybody like to make a motion or second to vote on recommendation to approve the amendment or special use PUD for 1023?
You know what, I'll make a motion. So I will make a motion to approve a zoning map amendment, special use for plan unit development and PUD preliminary plan for 1023 West Main Street redevelopment with the following conditions: a single-story structure only with no apartment or apartments, 2 fuel pump islands, and no variance for the dumpster located away from 11th Street.
Second.
You'll second that motion? I'd also like to include in that, if everyone's okay, this is also, would have to be with IDOT approval as well.
Right.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we have a motion by Warball, seconded by Petrilla. Let's do a roll call vote on that, please.
Baumgart?
Yes.
Mycroft?
Yes.
Lencioni?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Lester?
Yes.
Kulkaitis?
Yes.
Balla?
Yes.
Baylor?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Next up, we have the presentation, we have item D, recommendation to approve a general amendment to Title 17 of the St. Charles Municipal Code pertaining to microbreweries.
Thank you. The committee last discussed this general amendment on June 14th. At that meeting, neighbors of D&G Brewing expressed concerns regarding outdoor entertainment, and discussion of the item was postponed. Back in June, staff had proposed that amplification for outdoor entertainment could be prohibited after 8 p.m. for microbreweries in the M1 or M2 zoning districts that are adjacent to residential zoning. However, this proposal did not appear to address all of the concerns of the nearby residents, as the noise was cited by some residents as disturbing during daylight hours as well. The general amendment can move forward as presented in June, or there are a couple of new options highlighted in the summary to be considered. Option 1 would be to prohibit outdoor entertainment for all microbreweries in the M1 and M2 districts, and this would apply to both D&G Brewing and Riverlands. Option 1A would be to prohibit outdoor entertainment only for those microbreweries in M1 and M2 that are adjacent to residential zoning, and currently that would only apply to D&G. Option 2 would be to allow outdoor entertainment but limit the hours for those microbreweries in M1 and M2. And option 2A would be the same except to limit the hours only for microbreweries in M1 or M2 adjacent to residential zoning. The general amendment also includes a number of other provisions that are unchanged from the last meeting. Those are outlined in the packet. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments from council?
Yep.
Go ahead, Rita.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a general amendment as proposed, subject to option 1A, prohibit outdoor entertainment only for microbreweries in M1 or M2 adjacent to residential zoning.
Second.
Seconded by Silkatis. All right, let's do a roll call vote on that right now.
Oh, okay.
There's no discussion.
There's no discussion?
I mean, no, we can discuss it. Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, do I have the floor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so there's been a lot of discussion about this. And by the way, just to clarify, the motion doesn't include having it be a special use, so it would be regular.
Right, option 1A. Mm-hmm.
1A, perfect, because there are a lot of different contingencies. So
keeping it simple.
The one thing that I want to discuss on this is it looks like some conditional zoning. So it's almost like we have like M.5, M1, and M2. And I understand this is a really difficult area to deal with, but so now we have different zoning for whether you're close to residential or you're not close to residential. When manufacturing just by its nature is irritating. I mean, you can have distribution where you could have trucks idling in the area. You could have all kinds of machinery, hydraulics, things like that are allowed. But I also understand that we're being innovative already. We didn't used to have outdoor seating for breweries, and we're saying, yeah, no, that actually makes sense. But now we're putting kind of a commercial use there. But still, regardless of that, I don't love having conditional zoning based on how close you are to residential, because we wouldn't put conditional zoning, M1 is M1, M2 is M2. Now, I know it's not really convenient, but I think at least needs to be considered the ramifications of having conditional zoning, because anybody who is a brewery, they're not all in the same boat. So I know that in the past, the city's tried to avoid doing that through Plan Commission and inner zoning. So I just want everybody to consider as we vote on this, that all people in M1 are not treated the same. Now, we might not have better choices, but we shouldn't have much in our planning in our zoning ordinance that's that conditional. Otherwise, we don't have a plan.
Go ahead, Rita.
Yeah. To Mr. Lencioni's point, when we approved the special use, correct, Ellen, the special use microbreweries for M1, M2, right now?
Currently, it is not a defined use. So currently, we classify it as a manufacturing use, and then the tap room as an accessory.
Right. So we approved it back then, breweries were manufacturing.
Yes.
And then because of COVID now, they've changed their business plan to become an entertainment option. And that's not, and when we changed to approve microbreweries as a manufacturing business, in fairness to the neighbors, okay, another manufacturing. We're okay, that's what it was. But now we're changing it to an entertainment use, and I'm not sure that's fair either, to change the business plan and therefore change the use, and especially adjacent to residential.
I'm clear and I agree with you. My point is only not fairness to everybody. It's just, you know, having consistency in the ordinance. I realize that this is difficult, and we're making changes, and I think we're being very innovative, you know, and I agree with you because there's a big commercial use. You know, having people outside, that is commercial use, it's not manufacturing. I just want a consideration on conditional zoning, and just even if people choose that this is okay, we shouldn't have, we should limit conditional zoning in our zoning ordinance.
Go ahead, Mr. Bancroft.
So I don't think this is conditional zoning, just so you know. I believe that what we're saying is, whatever the M1, M2 designation is, at any point in time that you are in a place that is next to residential, you can't do amplified music, and it's applied throughout consistently. What doesn't feel right is, it is kind of after the fact to a particular establishment, but I mean, that is what it is, and I think that, I agree with everything that Alderman Faylater said about, you know, they came up with a different business plan, and maybe it's more lucrative, but that doesn't mean that they need to have amplified music next to a residential neighborhood. So, I can't think of a better solution. I mean, I'd be in support of the motion, just so you know, and at the end of the day, you know, to me, I don't think it is technically conditional zoning, albeit it is quirky that it's after the fact against individual business.
Go ahead, Alderman Bongard.
So, this might be after the fact, but did we miss a little bit here with how we're defining microbreweries? I mean, are we really thinking that a microbrewery nowadays is, you know, a single factory without a tap room and people outdoors? Like, every time I think microbrewery, I think outdoor, I think it's a pseudo restaurant. So I get that we zone things, we put them in, we call it a microbrewery, we think it's, you know, 10 people in a tank making beer, you know, at 8 o'clock at night, but it's an event. So is this something potentially, like, if we could go back and look at, you know, where we would have zoned a microbrewery and how we're defining what a microbrewery is part of this, like, it's a difficult situation because in hindsight, COVID aside, this is exactly what microbreweries do. I mean, they're entertainment, you know, destinations. It's really the size and scope of, are you a full-scale bar and restaurant? Are you a tap room? Do you have, like, it's not an industrial shutdown place that you don't have people congregating and entertaining. And, you know, put it wherever you want, zone it however you want, you're going to have people enjoying themselves, coming to enjoy, you know, what people are making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and previous to this amendment, our interpretation, we don't have a microbreweries use category defined in our zoning ordinance. So when a microbrewery in the past approached the city asking if we allow this, we have called it a manufacturing use, so that's why we identified the M1 and M2 districts where manufacturing uses are permitted, recognizing that within their floor plans that they submitted that they did have a tap room component, but we required that tap room to be less than 50% of the floor area. So that's kind of how we fit the use into our old zoning categories. The proposed use category for microbrewery, the definition does include a facility that's both for the manufacturer, but also includes a tap room and retail sales. And then it notes that live entertainment is allowed indoors, and then outdoor dining and outdoor entertainment are allowed subject to the use standards that you're discussing tonight.
Go ahead, Alderman Werball.
17.30, would that applies to this motion, all the verbiage in there? Section 17.30?
Yes.
Okay.
So the definition is 17.30. What you're discussing tonight would be a use standard, so that would go into Section 17.20, use standards. So basically, the use would be defined. It would be identified as allowed in the M1 and M2 districts with an asterisk, essentially, referencing to the use standards. And then the use standards would list a microbrewery in M1 zoning district adjacent to residential is could be prohibited.
But where it says microbrewery establishment where beer is brewed in quantities not exceeding
Yes, that's the
that applies.
definition. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's unchanged.
Perfect, thank you.
Any more questions or comments from council? I know we have some public comment on this. I'll go ahead and listen to that now. The petitioners can speak, the public can speak, doesn't matter to me. Go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Alexander Dreher, and I'm the owner of D&G Brewing at 303 North 4th Street, Suite A in St. Charles. When we originally proposed what we were doing in St. Charles, there were no breweries. And we took extensive time meeting first with Matt O'Rourke, who was in planning and development, and he made the suggestion that the perfect place for us to be would be in an M1 zoning. And the concept, we met with the chief of police, with the mayor, with many in city council, and we talked about the concept of having a business that would grow organically throughout, and that it wasn't just about manufacturing beer, but that there would be a place for the community to come and enjoy that beer. And we talked about having tap rooms, and that was welcomed by the mayor, by planning and development, welcomed, I think, even by the chief. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but there were a lot of questions asked about how we do this, and the idea that we are a part of the community and entertaining the community. We've met with a lot of challenges over the last year and a half with COVID, and a lot of us did have to kind of redefine things. When we first started, the idea was always to have a little, outdoor space and entertainment. The deck was a part of the plan. It was built within a month of us opening. We did get the necessary approvals to do so, and it was approved. We understand that we're different than a bar or restaurant. We do not have the same problems that bars and restaurants can have. Our clientele, they enjoy what we're building in the city. I mean, it started with the idea that there would only be 2 breweries in town, along with a small distillery. And now we're at, basically 4 or 5 breweries if you consider the distillery as a brewery as well. Clearly, it's a concept that St. Charles is embracing. And a part of that redefinition since COVID, and this has changed everyone, and these are changes that are going to be long-lasting, is that there's entertainment, that breweries are places where people come and they get to enjoy the beer, or distilled spirits, and enjoy what we're doing. I know there have been a few complaints. They're coming from specific residents, but there are also many residents within these communities that love what we're doing. And to say we can come to a compromise with the residents, something like APM, the original proposed amendment with Planning Commission a few weeks back, we thought was the compromise. That, okay, well, maybe 10 o'clock's too late. You go to bed early, you have to be up for a job. Therefore, we should be, we should be earlier. We should be 8 o'clock. And we were like, well, we can still conduct business as a brewery, because we have other breweries in town which are not going to be subject to these rules that we're going to be subject to. And they can play entertainment till 10 p.m. based on their zoning. We didn't choose our zoning. The city kind of chose the zoning for us. They said, this is where we want you. They introduced me to my landlord. They said, here's where we want you to be, and we thought, great. And we said, here's our idea of what we're trying to build. We just, we're literally just, we're trying to provide a service to the community. And I know many community members, based on our customers, love what we're putting out there. And I want to be as amenable to the people that live in my neighborhood, because many of those people come into my establishment, listen to the music, and enjoy what we're doing. And like I said, I just feel like we could come to this compromise and say 8 p.m. And even if we made that compromise 8 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays, we're willing to work with that, and do that. But to cut it off and say, no, we're not going to allow that, that means some breweries who are able to do it will have an advantage in business over us. And, we support families too. We have people that we feed at our business. My assistant brewer and wife and my bartenders, we feed them. If a person in one of the residences were to have a party in their backyard, they would be allowed to have music till 10 p.m. We're saying, okay, 8 p.m. It seems like a fair compromise. Like we're trying to do the best we can given where we are, where we were asked to be located, and the type of business model we were trying to build. So I would hope that the original amendment with the 8 p.m., even if we modify it slightly to just say weekends, would be something that would be amenable to the people in our community and in our neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Go ahead. State your name and your address, please.
Hi, Steve Mark, 1860 Dean Street, one of the owners of Riverlands Brewery. We had a few things. One, to Paul's comment about whether this was an exception or the conditional. Loud things outside is already allowed in manufacturing in M1. Just in my area, we have Ruffners, and they barks all the time, and it's often louder than our music. So I don't think that we have a special exception to say we're loud outside, at least for us, because we haven't had any complaints, any legitimate ones anyway. We've seen that happen before in other places. This was something that outside entertainment has been something that was in our plan all along. Before it was told that we had to have a permit for, we had to go to the council every time and ask permission to have the events, and we actually had them before the COVID. Our first anniversary party was before COVID happened. That was outside. We got a permit. We put up a fence. The patio was in the initial plan. I don't think that we pulled any switcheroo on the city here. We've been very upfront about that was something that we would like to do on a regular basis anyway. COVID just accelerated it, and then it pushed the business model a lot outside, because once people were out there, they were like, man, this is pretty nice. And as Alex said, that's something that sort of changed in our industry. And this industry has been a big economic motor for a lot of small towns. It's really important. It's employed a lot of folks. We have 4 full-timers and 8 to 10 part-timers, depending on the time of year. So we are employing a lot of people. We're generating a lot of revenue for the city, and I think it's important to consider that when you say, hey, if you cut it down outside, they're going to go somewhere. They just may not end up in St. Charles, or maybe they'll end up at a different place. So I think it's important to look at it and say, hey, are we just targeting microbreweries here, or are there other loud things that happen in M1 manufacturing? Isn't loudness sort of the whole point of M1 manufacturing? It seems to me that's why we were there in the first place. That's why we were steered towards mouthware. No one tells them what time of day they can drive the trucks out there and next door. And frankly, we've built a community in a little development where the neighbors all get along really well, and we share parking, and it works out. So I think it's important that we look at it and say, when you're talking about a fairness thing, M1 hasn't really had that restriction before. This is really imposing a new restriction on it and not necessarily adding something to it. Also, the other thing that I think is important to mention is that we've already built the outside complex, the majority of it. So we're tens of thousands of dollars deep into, we're probably looking at 60 or so, already putting money into that outside entertainment. And if we were to say, hey, you can't use that anymore, I'm going to have to board it up, and it's going to look bad. It's going to look bad for the city. It's going to look bad for us. I just don't think that's something that we want to do. So, I mean, I'm willing to answer any questions you guys might have about what kind of uses we're looking for and what kinds of entertainment we have. But we do tend to stick to more chill acoustic stuff, and I want to be here and available for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, ma'am.
My name is Martha Goss, and I live at 211 South 3rd Avenue. I'm wondering in regard to the proposal that you put forward, what adjacent means, and if that's within a certain number of feet of the property, or if that actually means a contiguous border with the microbrewery.
I'll direct your question to staff, right?
It would be from the property line, so adjacent property line or across the street.
Any more comments from the public or from the council? Any more questions?
Yep. Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Rita.
I apologize to the gentleman from Riverlands. Your mask, I think I caught most of what you were saying. Yeah. You understand that the motion I made only applies to breweries that are adjacent to residential?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Although there were a couple different options on there, and I wanted to...
my motion was for, would apply to those that are, yeah. Sorry?
1A.
1A, which is adjacent to residential, right?
Okay, and that would be amenable to us.
Pardon?
That would be amenable to us.
Okay.
We'd be okay with that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was clear that I heard you correctly. Okay, thank you.
You have a question there?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I had a question for Alexander. Yeah. And this is just to refresh, I guess, any of our memories, just because of COVID. How would you describe your business model prior to just even COVID happening? I mean, how did you run your business?
We haven't really changed much with our business at all. We've been bringing in bands since usually it's, when I say bands, it's generally a single musician with a guitar and an amplifier.
And that was inside or outside?
It would have been both, up on the deck.
Okay.
Once we had established the deck and built it during Scarecrow Fest. Also, when I think it was the St.Charles Business Alliance had been sponsoring musicians to come out to places of business. They were there. But we had them. We had the tap room established. We had bands inside. We really haven't changed much in our business plan. We're still growing organically and developing that way. So it really hasn't changed from when we originally...
And then how do you feel that worked within the area that you're in now, meaning the residential homes?
No one ever, the police never showed up prior to COVID when we had the expanded patio area. Since then, I think beginning September 11th was the first time, and I wholeheartedly agreed with the chief then that the band was obnoxious. It was a mistake to get a four-piece band with a very loud drummer banging on them outside. I think that was a big mistake. I've spoken with a number of the residents that were directly affected, the lady right behind us, her name was Shirley, about that, and in discussing it, she had asked about, can you do us a favor and not have big bands play in the back? And we agreed that was a very good idea not to have big bands playing in the back.
So prior to COVID, though, was everyone getting along? I mean, were you?
Yeah, I mean, and still, I don't think that many of us are not getting along. Shirley, the lady directly adjacent to us behind us.
Getting along might be a bad way of describing it, but I guess, was everybody okay with how you were running your business?
Yeah, I mean, yes. No one has ever mentioned the otherwise.
Okay. Thank you
to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Rita.
I just need clarification from Ellen. Prior to our, the bonuses we offered at COVID, was outdoor entertainment allowed at that venue? No.
No, not in conjunction with a microbrewery.
Yeah, right. So if they had it outdoor, they weren't supposed to. Because I remember, Alex, first of all, your dark ale to die for, I love it. But I just go on the record that you came before us when we were talking about doing this expansion, and you say, I don't want my music outside. I want to be back inside. And that's when everything was closed. And I remember you said that. And I thought, oh, okay, well, then this is just a temporary thing, that you would be, that we would grant your outdoor beverage service or whatever, that you said you wanted to get your clientele inside, you wanted to get your music back inside. And I understand it was a very frustrating time when everything was shut down, and we tried our best to accommodate you. But as I recall, that the outdoor music wasn't part of that.
It might have been allowed at some point in association with a special event permit.
Yeah, a special event permit, right, like a scarecrow or whatever, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So currently we have a motion on the table for 1A. Mr. Chair. Oh, we have another public comment. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I'll try to keep this brief. My name is Matthew King, that's K-I-N-G. I live at 320 State Street in downtown St. Charles, Illinois. I do not share a property line with Alex, but I am 2 doors down from him, and I'm about equidistant from his business and the bars along North Avenue. So last time I came before this panel, I was winging it, so if you'll bear with me, I prepared some statements today. Esteemed board, people of St. Charles, Alex, and the staff of D&G Brewing and Riverlands. The last time I came before you to discuss this issue as a resident of downtown St. Charles since 2016 and neighbor to D&G since Alex started his business in our fair town, we discussed noise ordinances and decibel levels. It was at that time that I gave you information on the decibel levels that I've read off my front porch facing downtown and my back deck facing D&G. It was at that time that this panel voted unanimously in support of small businesses that bring a generally pleasant and compliant crowd to our local community. I can say that because D&G's patrons park along both sides of my property. It seems this evening that we've been struggling with how to define microbreweries and what they bring to our community. Microbreweries are nothing new to the world. If you spend any time in England, they call them town pubs. It's where you'll find live music and where you might, on open mic night, catch somebody giving a speech from Shakespeare. As a resident over the past 4 years, never once have I had to pick up empty beer bottles from my lawn placed there by Alex's customers. Nor have I had to call St. Charles police to chase down a drunk driver that has fled my property because I caught them relieving themselves in my front flower bed. These problems I have had, and they've come from the clientele of restaurants, bars, and clubs downtown that are in fact committing noise violations as late as 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning. According to where I live, 2 doors down from Alex's business, not once have I taken issue with the sound level of amplified music coming from his establishment. To be perfectly honest with you, the Free Music Thursdays in Lincoln Park in front of St. Patrick's Church is louder, and over these past few weeks, as Potawatomi Park Pavilion has once again had people rent their facility, they have been louder. So much so that I can make out what's being said from my backyard on the west side of the river. I believe what Alex and the staff of D&G and Riverlands are asking for tonight is that you uphold your vote in support of his business and his business so that they can continue to be successful in our community, D&G being the first brewer to establish itself in St. Charles at a time when every town along the Fox River from Algonquin to Yorkville had one but us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second for option 1A to prohibit outdoor entertainment only for microbreweries in M1 or M2 adjacent to residential zoning. This would apply to D&G. Can I please have a roll call on that?
Baumgart?
Yes.
Bancroft?
Yes.
Montioni?
Yes.
Petrilla?
Yes.
Wirball?
Yes.
Bester?
Yes.
Sakaitis?
Yes.
Bala?
Yes.
Beitner? Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. All righty. Next, we have a presentation of a concept plan for the Dean Street mixed-use project.
Yes, the concept plan has been submitted for feedback by John Slayton for a vacant 1.3-acre parcel fronting Dean Street adjacent to the West Dean Center. Proposed is a mixed-use building containing offices for Slayton Construction on the first 2 floors and residential units on a partial 3rd floor. And the applicant is present tonight to make a presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Committee. I'm Raymer Maneja, and I'm one of the project managers of Slayton Construction. So I'm just here to present our proposal to erect a building to house the Slayton Construction's headquarters by in a 1.3-acre parcel fronting Dean Street. So the main intent of the building, it is a 2-story office and warehouse, and the 3rd floor will be a penthouse that will be owner-occupied only. So the main purpose is for the building to house Slayton's company and all these subsidiaries, because Slayton company is growing, and recently we had like new divisions, like we're doing projects for the railroad, and this is like in the whole country. We recently have a residential division, and we also have our own drywall company, and we're planning to have a license in other states. So the main concern is for this 3 penthouse units, the residential units, to be one for the owner to live on one of those spaces. The other 2 will be for our traveling managers, for our visitors, if ever we have a meeting with development, for other developers, and then the whole building will be just for our own headquarters for different divisions. Specifically, we're just planning to have like a modern industrial design, so nothing more of a residential look. So that's it.
Questions? Go ahead, Wirball.
Are these going to be rented out in any time in the future, or is the intent for a live-work type of arrangement?
The intent is just for it to be owner-occupied, nothing to be rented out.
Mm-hmm. Are there going to be separate entrances to the office and then a separate one for the apartment above it?
Yeah.
2 separate entrances, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Bauer.
I think we brought this up earlier. The zoning doesn't allow for above commercial real estate, if I'm not mistaken.
But we can agree to this with a PUD, right?
Yes, so this could be accommodated through a PUD or a general amendment to the zoning ordinance to allow some sort of perhaps a live-work use in a manufacturing district. That was the way the Plan Commission wanted to go, was a general amendment as opposed to a PUD to allow the use in that way. So yeah, this is a manufacturing zoning district, M1, and of course residential is not currently permitted.
Go ahead, Tom,
That's just where I was going to go. So rather than have 1,000 questions about, are you going to rent it out, what are you going to do with it? The answer is we can agree to a residential use in the PUD, and in that PUD, I believe we could also add the restriction it needs to be owner occupant.
I believe we could. No?
Go ahead, Lencioni.
Well,
We might have to check with.
But we're already talking about it. I mean, it's not exactly owner occupied, it's employee occupied. You know, because it would be owner and, traveling consultant. So.
Theoretically, it would never be owner occupied because most people use entities, so, but some human affiliated with the business, how about that? We'll go.
Human affiliation, fair.
There you go.
Go ahead, Alderman Bongard.
It just seems like the last three, conversation presentations have been talking about mixing residential with places of business. So my concerns are the last two, didn't go well for certain individuals hoping to get something. So here we are again, looking to potentially do something similar in the same ballpark. So I would just be concerned if we're not looking at the last two conversations, how we're not going to apply the same logic to this.
Go ahead, Alderman Silcotis.
Yeah, I'm kind of agreeing with some of my colleagues up here. I mean, right now, I don't see any advantage to actually allowing residential units. Plus, let's say we made an ordinance and said it can only be owner occupied. How do you enforce that? How would you enforce that no one else can rent it unless you actually own it? That'd be impossible.
The way we enforce every other zoning.
But you're only doing this for this area.
Cite them if they didn't follow the rules.
But you'd have, you're just opening up a door that, there's no way we're gonna check every year who's renting those three apartments?
No, it wouldn't be up to us to police it that way.
We'd have to, because
the answer is that if somebody, it would work the way any other zoning violation would work. Somebody would complain about the use, and then you would investigate it and cite them.
I'm fine with everything else, but I see no reason to change our zoning, just allow apartments, and as we said, we just denied it for a gas station. Why would we allow it here?
Well, we had a discussion about that component of the gas station.
Right.
We denied.
The residential.
No, we discussed a million different reasons why that wasn't working on that site. I didn't say I didn't like it because you didn't hear me say it. I didn't say it. I didn't care for that plan and a variety of, you called it 13 variances or whatever there was out there. There's a million reasons why that site didn't work. I don't know that I agree with it on this. I don't know if I agree with that prohibition.
I respect your opinion. I just don't think we need to start the process of now everybody now have apartments in manufacturing districts. That's just going to open up a big can of worms.
Go ahead, Mr. Warbaugh.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Alderman Silcotis is saying. I'm thinking about this. We have industrial, we have a brewery with outdoor amplified music. We're going to have residential. And I'm just wondering, are we going to have challenges with that in the future if we're setting a precedent now with that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but it concerns me.
Go ahead, Mr. Lencioni.
Yeah. So, in looking at this, I actually love that a lot of people are thinking about live above because, I appreciate the creativity. Everybody's trying to, whatever it takes to make a business work, and if you can combine uses, that makes sense. But I started my conversation in the last item with manufacturing is inherently irritating. And if we allow people to have residences, you have to start looking out for their quality of life. And the whole idea of having a manufacturing district, I mean, we just took a look at an old manufacturing district that is pretty close to retail, doesn't have, or residential, doesn't have buffering. And now we're saying, yeah, manufacturing, something that's great in manufacturing is great there as long as it's not close to residential. And now we're letting residential in, and we will have a responsibility to those people, our residences, our neighbors, who are now living in manufacturing, and it's going to be irritating. And the things that come up, I feel like, not being in favor of this as much as I believe that it's creative, and I like the thinking. I just can't find a way to support it just because I feel a right to look out for those people, because it will be irritating living in manufacturing and the things that come up. Somebody lives there. Oh, well, are they abutting a brewery? Now there's a residence there. I think that's, looking for trouble, but I think that these are concerns that I just think it probably makes better policy to keep manufacturing.
Go ahead, Rita.
I think the distinction is the live-work component. And this, Ellen, help me out here. This, we're talking manufacturing, whereas before we weren't talking manufacturing, right? We were talking BL or whatever, right? The gas station apartment, right?
Yes.
And this live-work type of use is a common use, correct?
Well, we have an artist live workspace, which is allowed as a special use in this zoning district. I don't believe we have any in town, but it is one item. And if this were brought forward as a general amendment to allow some sort of manufacturing or office live work, it could also be a special use, so each one would need to be approved based on the site.
Right.
Go ahead, Mr. Bala.
Not that this establishes next to Riverlands, but say this Riverlands was one block over, they would be cut out with outdoor music immediately because they would have residential apartments, one within adjacent property. Isn't that the proposal we just did for D&G?
I think it would be after the fact. So since Riverlands was there first and established their use first.
Okay.
But you're correct, if the residential was there first, then it is adjacent to Riverlands.
Any other comments or suggestions? I have a question for you. So will the units above, if you choose to move forward, will they be separately metered and everything? Everything will be totally separate?
I'm sorry?
For the utilities, everything will be totally separate from the units below?
Yes, that's the plan. And if I may add something.
Go ahead.
The technically the main use of the offices is just to house like the Sladen Construction's office. Even though it's in an M1 district, even if it's in manufacturing, technically it won't affect the living conditions of the one living on the penthouse. And if ever the plan is for our traveling managers to be there whenever we need them, and for the company, this will, save us like hotel expenses, and at the same time, all of us will be in one headquarters. That's the main intent.
Okay. Go ahead, Rita.
But, I mean, this is a concept plan, so we're not
That's right.
voting it. And I like the concept of live work. And Ellen, this is, I think you stated, so forgive me if you have to say it again, this is a PUD-related thing, so it would be case by case, correct?
This particular project could be processed as a PUD, or it could be, we could do a general amendment and then create a live work use that's a special use. So then this project then would come forward with a special use request for the use.
Okay, thank you.
Do you currently have any conceptuals of how it'll look at all? Is there anything in the presentation? I don't think so. There is. The elevation.
So this is our proposed elevation. Initially, we just presented the floor plans, one elevation, and a site development plan. But if ever we move forward, of course, we'll be hiring architects and the right professionals to do everything for us.
Is there an elevation facing south?
I apologize. This is the only elevation that we proposed.
Any questions, comments on this? No? I think conceptually, I would continue to move forward with it, based on the comments. Obviously listen to the comments that were made here, and continue on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation of a concept plan for the River East Apartments.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to step down for this item.
Yes, Mr. Bongard, thank you.
Yes, this is a concept plan for the River East Apartments. Plan Commission reviewed the concept plan on July 20th Their comments are summarized in the executive summary, and also the meeting transcript was attached into the packet. In general, the Planning Commission supported the concept of mixed use and housing development, but raised issues related to residential density, building mass, use of public property for private use, parking, and traffic issues. There are also a number of letters that have been submitted, and those have all been included in the packet. So in addition to the feedback on the overall development concept, staff's looking for direction from the committee to understand whether there is an interest in allowing use of city property for this project. And with that, I'll turn the presentation over to the applicant.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Conrad Hurst. Live at 9 East Main, St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Curtis Hurst. I live at 700 North 3rd Avenue in St. Charles.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us come here tonight. As provided in the information and without going through it all in detail, I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions, but what we're trying to do here is get obviously some informal input before we move forward with finalizing the plans, submitting a formal request for the approval process. All of our planning on this is really generated from the 2013 comprehensive plan. It was most recently updated in 2020. It locates this property. Is there a mouse here? Go back up to that. If you can get that to. Go back up to that. So the 2013 comprehensive plan locates this property in what's called the downtown sub-area. It further identifies this as a catalyst site, which represents the greatest potential for riverfront development on the east side and can have a catalytic impact on the surrounding area. I think you all know what that means without going into detail of that. It's also identified in this plan as a southern gateway to downtown. So it should, as part of that, should include significant gateway features that encourage outdoor activities, events, cafes, pedestrian-friendly, bicycle-friendly, all of the above. So the primary objective of all of that is to, foster an active and interesting district. We agree that this is the gateway to the southern part of the city, and we want to try and achieve those goals. If you look at this current rendering of what the comprehensive plan, it shows a little bit more robust plan than what we're envisioning, just partly because there's an existing building there that we think has some value from the standpoint of how we work with the footprint on that rather than taking it down completely. It doesn't have anything to do with historic significance or any of that. It has more to do with we think that the footprint can be worked with and the economics of that are beneficial. So that's really one of the primary reasons to work with that footprint. We also, in this plan, as you should see, the Riverside Avenue is completely closed with the building that was proposed on there in this plan. We think that having Riverside Avenue still as an active corridor for vehicular access to get downtown is important. There's lots of ways to mitigate how that traffic flow is coming in. Currently, it comes in quite fast, as does other areas. And so our concepts, if you can go to the site plan and read this. Our site plan really anticipates doing a few things that will still have access to the downtown area. The next one, there you go. Admittedly, these are, obviously the first stages of the plan. So we've already started to further develop them a little bit as we've gotten input from everybody. But the idea here is to really utilize that southern tip there for multiple things. One is to help with getting additional parking, also to slow down the traffic. As you notice on there, we've narrowed down Riverside Avenue just by a couple of feet. It would be similar in size for reference to the First Street area in between the buildings down there, and it helps slow down the traffic. And the crosswalk you see there is currently anticipated they have a word for it. I'm not really familiar with it, but it's basically an elevated sidewalk. So it essentially helps elevate the pedestrians, make them more obvious in the oncoming traffic, but it also makes everybody think about this. There's a lot of other things that you can do, whether it's signage and lighting, those types of things, to help slow down that traffic. But we definitely want to encourage the downtown traffic, as we do also want to encourage outdoor activity in that area, both to the south, the north, to the west, obviously, which is the river. And so this plan does an okay job of that. We understand that. It's just, again, to kind of get the sight lines in so that you can kind of get an idea of that. But our goal there would be to maximize what we can do outdoors there, whether it's patio space, green space, those types of things. Those are really the goals of that. And I think those are consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is pedestrian, bicycle access, attractive and discernible entries to the city. And so those are all part of the goals of the comprehensive plan. As far as the footprint, go up to just the main footprint. Next one. Yeah. So as far as the footprint goes, as you can see, it's, maybe you can, the southern part of the building is really essentially the footprint of the existing building there. The northern part of the building is really an addition over the existing parking lot. And so you would still have the surface parking lot that exists today. That's 37 spots. I think it'll change down to 32 or 33, depending on the configuration of the structural elements of the building. But essentially the goal is to keep as much parking as we can on that surface lot, and then augment the parking along the what would be the east side of the building. There's currently 11 spots there that are public spots. So that would be 48 spots. The 37 currently and the 11, those are existing. Our plan would have approximately 64 spots, depending on how that all shakes out on the final plan. So we're really trying to, within the confines of this footprint, identify as much parking as we can. And as you can tell by the existing use, certainly BMO Harris was a good partner with the city in terms of allowing private use or public use of a public or private parking area. We would fully intend to keep that going forward just as well, to the extent that it makes sense for everybody, all the stakeholders involved, which will be residents, new residents, existing community as well. So, you know, depending on how the footprint finally shakes out, it'll be somewhere in that 60 plus or minus range of added parking or total parking. And then talking a little bit about the building, just for your benefit, the current plan shows approximately 48 residences. All will be, and that's a schematic of a potential footprint. So basically, on 5 floors, there would be the first floor really is just the building itself that it currently exists and the surface parking that currently exists, and then 4 floors of residential added above that. And that's where you would get 12 units per floor. Again, all of this is subject to change. We've had a lot of comment. We're making some adjustments on that. We're going through that process, which is really what this concept review process is designed to do. And as we go through that, it's likely to end up somewhere in that 38 to 40 range of apartments, but currently it's drawn at 48 apartments. To talk to what we're trying to do with those apartments from a use standpoint is, the best I can describe it is a young urban professional, to not even coin that phrase, obviously, but they are, you know, people that will live and work in the community, starting a family, eventually be home buyers in the city, and so that would be our prime target in terms of what those rental units would be used for. So with that, I would open it up to any questions or comments and how the process goes.
Questions or comments at this point? Go ahead, Brian Warville.
Okay, so I'll start off with an easy one here.
Sure.
In Indiana Avenue, you want to close off Indiana Avenue and then the triangle right-of-way?
That's correct.
And you want it conveyed over to you for private use, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What is the primary purpose of doing that? Is that to gain parking spaces? What is the purpose of that?
There's a couple of really goals there. One is to have a larger patio area to the south of the building that would be used for the users in that building. It's public knowledge now, it's getting out there.
Mm-hmm.
At the beginning, we started to not talk about it, but we're working with Sammy's Bikes to be in this location. To give you some background on that, Sammy's been in business, in the community for many years. He's very successful, he's very popular, and this is just a prime site for him from the standpoint of being able to capture the pedestrian traffic that naturally occurs and the bicycle traffic that naturally occurs on there along Riverside Avenue, because it is really the bike path at this point, the identified bike path. So there's a lot of bicycle traffic there. So it's a great opportunity for him, but also for all the people that are using those the bike path as well, the pedestrians, and it fits well with the comprehensive plan goals. So that's part of the outside use that's expanded. The other is a grassy area. It's not well defined here, but we want to have as much grass in there. We like open space as much as we can, and so we're trying to design that so that we can accomplish a few goals in there. One, to have open space. We like as much open space as we can get as well, and also for some monumentation that the city would be proud of, and we can work with different entities. They're private, public, artist type things, so that we can have a great southern gateway to the city, and then also to address some parking as well, to the extent you can. It's a small piece,
right?
So it's not going to generate a tremendous amount of parking. But if you look at this current plan, that little spot adds 16 spots.
So my question is, obviously, did you have an opportunity to read all the letters and emails? Okay. Yep. So I share a lot of their concerns with that. My first concern is when is turning over public property to a developer for private use. I don't have an issue with collaborating, but I think ownership of that property, that street, should be retained by the city. Now, I understand what you want to do. You want a patio over there to display the bikes or use it over the summer. I'm assuming.
Mostly for outdoor cafe, actually.
Outdoor cafe? Okay.
Yeah. Juice bar, that type of thing.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you have?
Not to say that there wouldn't be any bicycles or things out there, but that's not really the intended use of that.
Okay. So how many spots are you gaining by closing off Indiana Avenue? Is it 5?
It's actually.
Because I counted 5 on the when I was looking at the.
So if you're just taking out the ones that are aligned with Indiana, that's probably correct.
About 5. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, to me, I can understand if you want to go in a little bit on 2nd Avenue, but to close down Indiana Avenue to gain 5 spaces, and that's going to impact the traffic flow. I know you did a traffic study there for the residents that live there. They've expressed a lot of concerns about that, and that concerns me as well. So I don't know if it's worth closing the street to gain 5 parking spaces, I guess, where I'm going.
It's not just for the 5 parking spots.
Right.
Because you do get extra green space, you do get extra patio space. So
right.
The 5 parking spots, they're neither here nor there. Obviously, you take advantage of the opportunity, but it's not just for those 5 parking spots. It is for the added outdoor space, both, for patio and for green space. And again, those things are consistent with the comprehensive plan in trying to encourage outdoor pedestrian and bicycle activity in the downtown district.
Although not well conveyed by the current plan.
That's exactly right.
So you're familiar with Second Avenue, Third Avenue, you can't make a left turn. That was expressed by a lot of people that you
Sure.
can't make a left turn. They come down Indiana, make a right turn on Riverside to get to Illinois. And,
right.
You know, what are your comments on that as far as their concerns? Do you have any ideas how to address that?
Well, we've also done a traffic study. I don't want to get ahead of myself on any of the, you know, the things that go in the submittal. But to summarize the comments in a very general form, it's very easy to redirect the traffic in this area from professional traffic study that would show how to do that. So instead of me getting out over my skis, I'd rather be able to submit that final report as part of the PUD.
Okay. Have you just done a traffic study on Indiana Avenue? Was that the only, or was there other streets?
Riverside.
Riverside as well?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. As far as the building itself, it seems like you've got some pretty large variances as far as the density, the bulk standards. What is the reason for this? Is that just to maximize the space? What is the purpose of the? Because you're way out of, like, for example, the minimum lot area says 48,000 square feet required for 48 units.
Sure.
It says you currently have 21,400 square feet for 21 units. So for me, it seems rather out of the ballpark, you know, really dense with that number. And my question is, if you left the actual footprint the same size that it is now, and you shrunk all of these variances back to where the zoning is, how tall would that building be with the commercial? Is it 2 stories?
Let me answer it a different way, because I don't know how to answer it directly that way. But there are currently 2 lots there. We own the parking lot that, well, we own both of them, obviously. One is the parking lot, and one is the one that the existing building is sitting on. And if you didn't combine them in a PUD, which has been the recommendation, to combine it as one lot in the PUD, that's where, when you get to one lot, all those gross areas come in.
Okay.
If we did 2 separate lots, we could actually have 40,000 square feet per building, so we wouldn't need that variance.
Okay.
And then the height, as far as the height goes, it's not about stories, it's about the height. And so the height that's currently allowed is 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
We show in our current concept plan, and again, this is a great thing about this process, is to find those things that work with or against a concept. We had 63 feet, but we were measuring it from the front. And so that's not where you're supposed to measure it from. You're supposed to measure it from the back.
Because of slope down, is that?
A certain point within the street. And so we're really only looking for, it's really, the final height is going to be approximately 58 or 59. So we're really looking for, so the answer to the question is, the zoning allows for 50 feet. So we can do it without a variance and just go to permit for that 50 feet, whereas that last 8 feet.
Okay. But the 50 feet, but if you shrunk the other 2, max gross floor area per building and the minimum lot area, it would pull it in on all 4 sides, wouldn't it? If you go 50 feet, wouldn't it pull the building? If you have this current, it would pull it in, right? It's kind of formula where you can.
You're better at answering that.
I would have to draw that out.
Yeah.
I haven't done the math on it. So.
Sure. Right. I mean,
you would, if you're going 50 feet.
Geometrically, that's probably correct.
Yeah, you would pull it in on the sides. You can go 50 feet, or you go out, or you can stack it, or.
Correct.
Okay.
And you'd lose building mass area.
Right.
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So I just think that the building is too dense. I think it's just the bulk of it is just massive when it's that close to a residential area. It just doesn't blend well, just looking at this picture. The towering effect over the houses there, I'm assuming it's going to have a shadowing effect. I think the Plan Commission requested a shadowing study. The other thing I have is the architectural design and style of the building. I think you mentioned this is pretty raw. for the most.
These are broad strokes.
Just the-
both on the
okay.
site plan and the building, that's correct.
Okay, so I'm just looking for something that flows a little bit better with brick, you know, with the Arcata, you did a great job with that, with Pollyanna. Something that flows, blends a little better with the area in the historic district.
And we're working through that as well.
Okay, and then as far as, like, are there issues with the sanitary sewer lines over there?
Not that I'm
As far as connecting, because in the packet, it mentioned, maybe staff could comment on that, if that's,
So what's in the, oh, you're going to go ahead?
Sure. There is a note from the staff review from the Public Works Department regarding sanitary sewer capacity, specifically because there's a trunk line that runs along the river that at certain times when there's heavy flow from rainwater will surcharge and that needs to be bypass pumped. So what's going to need to be studied is how this building would be connected into that system. It couldn't be directly connected to the trunk sewer. It would need to be connected to a different sewer that's in the area. So that's something that would need to be studied in terms of where that connection is and whether there's volume to accommodate that flow.
so would this impact what's being pumped out in the river now, if it's connected to a different connection point?
It's hard to say without us having a design that we've studied. But
we're not there yet, we're not really...
No, that's more of something that would be looked at the preliminary engineering stage, which we're not at yet.
Okay.
For Russell.
Go ahead, Mr. Bessner. Russell, 1 second.
I just have one question. Regarding First Street, as it exists now, what is our total height there? Do you know offhand?
The buildings vary in height, but they do reach up into the upper 60s, low 70 range, depending on where you're measuring on the building.
And then, and 50 foot is what's currently as high as you can go where we're talking about now?
Correct. That's what the zoning district would permit.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question for Russell.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments right now?
Yeah.
Sorry. Other people.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rita.
Yeah, just going off of staff's request for feedback on the plan. Land use, A-okay with the mixed use, I think that's great. You know, I'll just go along, but I understand it's under consideration right now. The building is too dense, too high, too bulky, and I appreciate any work you can do to diminish that. But really, I can't tell you enough, gentlemen, how refreshing it is to have a developer speak to the intention of the comp plan. I mean, how many times have we been up here and we heard, you know, we talked to the comp plan and the developer will say, well, it's not set in stone. Oh, well, it's just a concept. Just thank you. That's just thank you. And also, one more compliment, Mr. Hurst. Wow, I am real impressed with your parking math off the top of your head. Continue. I mean, that's amazing to me because I'm sitting there doing it, adding it up too, and kudos. But more importantly, I appreciate your sensitivity to the fact that there is a parking issue, you know, to be discussed further, and anything that you're doing to alleviate that, I appreciate. As far as the, I hear you, I agree. I think you've spoken well to the necessity of a PUD, so I'm okay with that. And the conveying of the city property, I'd be okay with that too, pending your traffic study, once that gets all remedied. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rita. Other questions or comments? Go ahead. Mr. Bancroft?
So, I mean, I agree with Alderman Payleitner's. I'm probably less concerned about the mass scale. I'm more interested in what the final architecture looks like. I know we're not there.
Sure.
I think the unit count doesn't concern me at all. You know, I expect that there's probably no one in St. Charles as sensitive to parking as you all, given your ownership down there now and the Arcata Theater and the like. So, but I appreciate it. I think spot on the comment on the comp plan. Terrific tying it all back to that. I think it's great. And, you know, as to the conveyance of city property for something that we all deem is good, I mean, we have a very rich history of doing that, even with you. Didn't we? do
I
something
believe
with
so.
a building over there at the
I
Archive
believe so.
Theater.
Yes, we did.
So I'm not too concerned about that.
Thank you.
I think it's fantastic.
Okay, thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Stokatis.
Again, I'd like to echo my colleagues. Thank you for all you've done for St. Charles. I appreciate you spending all the time on this plan. I do have concern with giving city property view, okay? I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but I would have to have a lot more information to justify what would the benefit be to the residents of St. Charles?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, technically, it's their property.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to justify it to them as to why you need those two parcels of land. And I would, going back to the density.
Sure.
And I think basically, I think it's too tall and too wide. I would like to see somehow it shrink to compromise on everything, to make it work so everybody can at least say, okay, it's compromise, we'll do it. But right now it's too tall. I know you can have 50 feet, 5 stories. I just had a problem with the last story is my concern, right?
Architecture on that to address those.
Yeah, and say the historic preservation comments, I'd like you to look, understand those too. I agree with a lot of their comments. And the staff comments, as has been mentioned.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I have to say, the comments I've heard from people, besides reading, from what I've heard is, it's too tall and too massive.
Mm-hmm. And
for that corner, and that's
we're
why
working through the architecture.
Right, and that's why I'd appreciate if you could work on that, so we could, I understand it's a concept plan, but I'd like to see maybe another concept plan to give us some idea of what we're dealing with.
Right.
So again, thank you for all you've done for St. Charles.
Go ahead, Alderman Lencioni.
Thank you very much. The first thing that I want to comment on is how much I appreciate hearing you listening to and thinking about, what the community is saying and trying to find the right ways to make, reasonable accommodations to, just like, because this feels like a project that St. Charles is all doing together, the residents and everything, and I appreciate that. And also, I know I've spent, most of a decade on Plan Commission, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are going to be living a couple blocks from this development, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Current and that will be as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, to have developers that are going to be, living with the things that they build, that means a lot. I mean, that's absolutely terrific scenario. I mean, that's just very St. Charles. So, I appreciate those things very much. I'm glad to know about the building massing, that if you weren't gonna, you could actually have a lot of the massing that you have if you consider the two lots individually. That makes a lot of sense to me. I also appreciate that this type of development was in the comprehensive plan, which is, the guidebook of what St. Charles is looking for. Literally saying, hey, if somebody can go and do this, and I mean that's been in the comprehensive plan for quite some time. So I appreciate that you guys are willing to take on that project. As far as the green space, I've listened to the Park District before. Take a look at little pieces of property like this when other people were donating them and say they're not actually looking for it. They don't think that they add recreational value. Now, it's nice for the neighborhood, but there's also a park there, and I think that it's still going to be green space. It's just going to be incorporated to a different concept. So I understand the hesitance, but I also think that you're going to do something great with it. In all, I appreciate the spirit of everything that you're doing. And also, I have one last question. How tall is the baker in compared to this building? Do you know? Does anybody know? We always used to use a rule of thumb that we were trying to not have something.
I think it's about 5 feet less than what First Street is. I don't have the round number, but they might have it.
Of 75 feet, on 75.
Okay, so this will not be as massive as the baker.
Our goal was to keep First Street, very from First Street, lower than what that baker.
Right.
That's what's going on with January 75.
So, I mean, even that kind of fits with, what we in St. Charles have always used as a rule of thumb. So I see a ton of stuff that I like, and I appreciate the vision, and I just, just keep working through your renderings, and, I love your attitude towards it, and I'm incredibly supportive.
Appreciate that. Some of the perspectives that we'll be doing, again, this is very preliminary, but some of the perspectives that we'll be doing
will answer a lot of those questions that you're talking about. It's come up a couple of times in relationship to First Street, the Baker, and all of that. So when you do perspectives, you're able to see how that compares and complements what's happening in the rest of the city as well. So we're working through those as well.
That'll be cool to see. I got one quick question.
Go ahead, Mr. Vesey.
How long do you think this will take? Just a couple of years, 2, 3, 4 years?
Oh, gosh. I hate to be put on the spot like that.
Oh, okay. Well, less than 5 years, greater than 5 years?
The construction of it's going to take
A year.
12 to 18 months. So pending approvals, permitting, and all that stuff.
Correct.
That's about the timeline.
I'm asking that because First Street obviously is moving along. We've talked about height, it's been brought up, so it's not the race to be the tallest, but you know, there's some validity there for what's going on with the Baker and with First Street. Again, similar to what Alderman Payleitner and Alderman Bancroft had stated about tapering or architectural style. It'd be great to see it, you know, as it evolves a little bit.
Right.
But it's also, you know, the timeline that we were just talking about, and then you look at what you're doing now from the Harris almost right up against it is a really good thing. It's appreciative, of course. And so I was just trying to figure out how you both will be part of basically, you know, redeveloping 3 or 4 city blocks along the river. And I'm looking forward to seeing the plans a little bit further.
Our ambitious goal would to have it be livable by next fall.
That's incredible. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Petrillo.
In general, you know, I do want something at the site. I think you guys have done awesome, as my colleagues have mentioned, with your other projects. Lots of question marks still. I'd like to see the traffic study, as Alderman Payleitner mentioned, which, you know, is a great amount of data that we could use to further our discussions. But the PUD, in terms of these points here, I'm always in favor of a PUD. I think it's good. The use is acceptable, of course, because again, I think what does come here will be great. You guys do fantastic work. The residents their input, and I thank you for reading all of those messages. They just can't be ignored, of course, and I know you won't. And as Alderman Besner said, I look forward to the next iteration. I mean, I think you can move forward with this information, and you're gonna, you know, develop something awesome.
Mr. Rohrbaugh, do you have another comment?
No, I just like that you're doing something with the property. I just ask that you take the residents' comments into considerations, their concerns, and you know, architecturally blend it in. You're doing a lot of good stuff down there. I like it. You know, they just have some concerns. They're living there. They can't move their house, right? They want to see the view of the river as well and enjoy it, and maybe collaborate with them. Have you had an opportunity to talk with them at all, or any of the residents? No? Okay.
Other than the open forum here, we've had a lot of comments, and we're certainly listening to those comments.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Comment I'd like to make, obviously, you know, with respect to it being the southern gateway, I just want you, Frontier, to be mindful of that, you know, and maybe have it kind of be a gradual rise into town, obviously, with the possible sculpture or use of that green space. Hopefully that can be achieved. I love the fact that we're going to try to increase that access to the riverfront, if you will. I think it's something that we all discuss all the time as far as walkability and activity, and just incorporating use of the river more, I think will be great. I love the fact that we're going to possibly reuse the footprint of the old building. I love repurposing of stuff. Obviously, I'm a data-driven person, so I definitely want to see, you know, traffic studies, the shadow study. I think that will help maybe shed some light, good, bad, or indifferent on the project. I think that could change some people's views. One question I did have is, you know, as this whole project gets done on Riverside, you know, this as well as other projects, one thing I always notice down there is the overhead utility line. I know I've had people bring it up to me saying that that's the only section that really has overhead utility lines. Has there been any discussion or any thought into doing something with that? I know staff has mentioned it, I've talked to them about it. I don't know if you guys have engaged them at all.
Yes. Yeah, so just to kind of back up so we appreciate the comments. We are very in tune with, the stair-stepping element of not only the building, but also the elements that are, green space. It's really one of the reasons we like the way it's shaping up now, which is what's in the comp plan. Just simply brings that gateway up, and there's an opportunity to do some artwork down there that is consistent with what's happening in the rest of the city as well, which we think is fantastic. And we're also working with the River Corridor, right? River Corridor. I can say that now because we're actually, having a dialogue with them so that we can get them engaged, so that we can do improvements along the river, not only directly across here, but how can we facilitate it? Obviously, we have some other property north of Illinois Street, which is the BMO from existing, which we're working on some engineering there. So in relationship to all of that, we are advocating to have those power lines taken down, if not all the way back to the substation. There's a tower there that makes sense that you can keep it there and get down Prairie Street and continue on as far as, the opportunity exists. So we're definitely an advocate of that. We're putting it into our engineering to the extent that it makes sense from a staging standpoint. So it's obviously a project that's got, long capital expenses in it, has to be thought out. So the thoughtfulness of that in the current plan is that here's how it currently exists on our site plan, and here's how we think it can happen and what it'll impact, so we can coordinate those types of things.
Great, thank you. I look at this, the whole section as this is a 100-year project. I mean, these buildings in this area have been around for almost 100 years, so I just want to make sure that as we're getting into something like this, that all things are being looked at, for a long-term plan. So thank you very much. With that, I'm going to open the floor to some public comment. Please state your name and address when you come up. Thank you very much.
Diane Morrison, 802 South 10th Avenue. I heard mention of narrowing Riverside. They tried that on Madison. They've got these islands in the middle of the road that are supposed to slow things down. They don't. I've even seen the police speeding down that. No sirens or anything, just because they want to get somewhere. People don't slow down just because you narrow a road. And that's how I got here today, and that would become dangerous for me. I don't want to have to hop on and off the trail just to get somewhere in St. Charles, because if you're trying to go somewhere other than the trail, that's not a good option. I don't like the height. I don't think above 50 feet is appropriate for a residential area. Someone mentioned, I forget who, I apologize, that the Hotel Baker is taller. The Hotel Baker is not in a residential area. And I also think it's a bad precedent to grant property to a developer with nothing returning. Those are my main points for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead. Someone's ready to go. Let's go. Please, go ahead.
My name is Martha Goss, and I live at 211 South 3rd Avenue. I'm addressing you tonight, including you, Mayor Vitek, and also you, Conrad and Kurt Hurst, to request you to provide the Hurst some feedback, some firm feedback regarding their proposal, feedback to advise them to stay within the city zoning requirements and to truly beautify the gateway that we're talking about, the gateway corridor to downtown. Their proposal is ugly and greedy. I ask you to view the perspective rendering submitted that shows the views of this development from directly across the river. And this is submitted on their page A104. And specifically, I'm looking at the bottom left view. It would be the view from Cave Diem Coffee House. And I just want to point out how it doesn't, if you look at all sides of the building in the rendering, it doesn't blend with anything within the several neighboring blocks that you can see in this view. And what I want to point out is that all of the trees in this view are going up the hill. And so none of them are actually at the level that they're showing the building, but the building is towering over all of those trees. So it really, and if you just drive through the neighborhood, there is a mature black walnut tree at 218 South 3rd Avenue, so it would be up a block and a half from this view. And you don't, from this view, you don't even see it. It would, you should be able to see it behind this view. It towers over the house that is, it's in the front lawn of that house at 218 South 3rd Avenue. And they're talking tonight about hearing the feedback and going to a 30 to 40 unit development, which cannot be accommodated without 4 stories according to their plan. And if you want to see what 4 stories would look like, I just urge you to drive out to the new apartments that are on Prairie Street and just look at the massive bulk of those buildings out there. So that's the first point I want to make. And I also wish to point out that in this view, the ATM, which is on the front left, it's pretty obscured. You actually can't see it in this view that they're showing. But it's really well lit at night. It's a bright blue beacon on the corner of that lot, and that's proposed to be part of their development right now. And also regarding the portion about being greedy, I feel like it's not an unobjective statement. It's right in their proposal. The minimum lot size required for the development is 48,000 square feet. Their proposal should be on the lot that's 48% larger than the one that they have. The maximum gross floor area is zoned at 40,000 square feet. Their proposal is 61% more than the maximum allowed. So the percentages that I'm quoting aren't like 5% or 7%. They're huge percentages over what are currently zoned. The maximum height allowed is 50 feet. Their proposal is 26% larger. And also, I'm not sure how the block was zoned for 50 feet. I just walked you through the exercise of looking at how this rendering shows how out of proportion that development would be for the neighborhood. I don't know how 50 feet was approved in the concept plan, or the plan that you were all referencing. And I would just say that just because they're allowed 50 feet, I would urge you all to really look at whether that's reasonable when you look at the neighborhood there. And whether that you truly think that would be appropriate after looking at the neighborhood. They're also required to replace the 5 parking spots that they're eliminating in their current parking lot. They don't propose a replacement for those 5 parking spots. And then they want the city to cede the 11 public spots right now that are along 2nd Avenue to them. They don't own those 11 spots right now that are on 2nd Avenue on the east side of this development. They want the city to cede those spots to them. So not just Indiana Avenue where they can create more parking and also the triangle space where they can create more parking, but those 11 spots that are on the immediate east side of the development space. They're required to have 48 residential parking spots, and they're also required to have 30.2 retail spots. But because they're in that special downtown taxing district, they can count the municipal spaces across Illinois Avenue toward their residential parking requirement. So it means that residents of their proposal would be parking in the city municipal lots and also in our neighborhoods. They would be permitted to park in those lots because there is 24-hour parking allowed in those lots. Business owners downtown right now are paying special taxes to support those parking lots, and ostensibly that's to have parking for their businesses. So now we're going to be having residential people parking in the spots that business owners are paying for to have for business use downtown. They can also count the municipal lot on Walnut Avenue between 2nd Avenue and 3rd Avenue toward their retail parking requirement. That's the 30.2 spots that they would be required to provide for retail. And I can just say for sure, anytime I go shopping, I just try to park close by where the shop is. So I truly don't think that people are going to be going a couple blocks over there to Walnut Avenue to park when they can park right in our neighborhood. If the development was in another location, they'd be required to have parking for 101.8 cars per the ordinances for parking. So I think that's a realistic number when you look at their proposal. They have 28 two-bedroom apartments and 20 one-bedroom apartments. So 101 cars. Where are they going to park? They're going to be parking in our neighborhood. That's the real be-all and end-all of it. The final truth about the parking is that they're providing 32 spots, the 32 spots that are underneath the north side of their development. And they're asking you and the rest of the city to fund the rest of the parking for the people who are going to be living there and shopping there. I'm also concerned with the garbage and the fact that our neighborhood is now going to be the back door of this development. Okay, so where's the garbage going to be? Where's that going to be handled? How is the building going to be serviced? Are there going to be, back doors for service entrances on our side of the neighborhood now? This is pretty big development. How about their industrial machinery and pumps, all the air conditioning and the water pumps and everything that are going to service the building? Is all that and all the servicing of the building going to be happening now, basically right across my backyard? I'm going to guess yes. Previously, Brian, you were talking about the sewer issues. I did ask about that because several of us have issues with sewer backup right now in the neighborhood. One of the neighbors said that when there are heavy rains and she hears pumps going down there, that she knows that she's got water backup, sewer backup in her basement. The Public Works did acknowledge that they're pumping raw sewage into the river right now. They have 2 pipes. This is a direct quote from the Public Works Department. During very heavy rainfalls over an extended period of time, there have been times in the past when sanitary waste was discharged into the river. This has not happened for at least 2 or 3 years. However, the pumps are currently in place in order to provide a prompt response if needed. If or when this event does occur, EPA guidelines and protocols are followed by Public Works. The reason for this is to prevent sewage from backing up into residents' basements and business establishments. I can only just say that this kind of development is only going to add to these issues. I know you said that that was going to require a further study, but it's a problem now. So for sure, it's going to need to be addressed. I'm also concerned about the retail portion of this development. I understand that a bar could go on this site right now as is. If the developer goes forward with a PUD, I strongly urge the committee to restrict the use of any retail space to prevent a bar or a restaurant on this site. You have before you tonight all the issues regarding regulating microbreweries that have had to listen to the neighbors of D&G Brewing tell you about their issues with the bar literally adjacent to their homes. It was the reason why I came up to the microphone to ask what the definition of adjacent means. I know that they are not in a manufacturing zone right now, but I'm extremely concerned that if you allow the retail portion of the space, the juice bar, that now we're running into the same issues that you heard about just this evening with D&G Brewing, where they've got live entertainment, and a lot of us are, but for sure the neighbors right there are less than 50 feet away. I'm less than 100 feet away from this patio that they're talking about putting in. Okay. That's my comment if they go forward with a PUD. Furthermore, if they've got entertainment there, they've got a juice bar there, we have even more issues with the parking and the other risks that are associated with noise and riffraff, obvious things from the hours of operation associated with any kind of bar that might be put into that space. I don't really think that's a stretch. We don't have too much retail success in downtown St. Charles. If you look at how much retail is actually in our area, I think I can count two places very close by us. We've got a place in the Fox Island Square, and then we have that Jeans and a Cute Top shop down on First Street. Pretty much everything else is services like insurance, bars and restaurants, accountants, travel agency, those kinds of service businesses and not retail. So I don't think it's a stretch that the space would be converted to or proposed to be converted to a bar restaurant, and that's my concern with allowing retail there. Okay, and then my last point, I strongly urge the developer and the city to urge the developer to build just housing on this site, two-story row houses that would incorporate the slope of the land. When I say 2 stories, I don't mean talking to you about 2 stories when in my head I would accept 3 stories. Tonight we heard the developers saying, okay, well, what we're actually hearing in terms of feedback from the people, we would tone this down to 30 or 40 units, which I feel like is hardly a step down. And I think it's that whole thing where if you ask for something big and then come back with something a little smaller, that people are a little bit more accepting of that. So I just want to say that when I say 2 stories, I'm not really saying 2 stories thinking, okay, I'll accept 3 stories. If you really look at everything else that's in the neighborhood and everything that's around this building, it's 2 stories. So I think if we're asking you to urge the developer to match the neighborhood, that's really what we're asking for. If they put in row houses, I think they'd be beautiful. They really would be a beautiful gateway to downtown. Furthermore, they wouldn't make an alley of the river. I think putting a development like this would be similar to what we did on the west side of the river, where basically you're taking away that openness and the whole river view from everybody who lives and works in the downtown area. You're creating now just a narrow gateway view of the river. And it's a privilege to to only the people who can be right there to enjoy it. It's not the privilege for the rest of the neighborhood anymore, and it's not even a privilege for the people who are just driving down Illinois from the library to get across town. If they did row houses, they could have garages. You'd eliminate all these issues with parking. I think they'd sell for a good price, and the Hearst could definitely recoup their investment. And if the city actually feels like a proposal like this is necessary, you could help them find a site to actually put this proposal. The developer, the Hearst, have garnered a lot of goodwill from the neighbors and from the city council, everybody. I heard all of your compliments to them tonight. I feel, as a neighbor to the other developments that they've put in downtown, appreciative of what they've done as well. But it would be a shame for them to squander all of that goodwill on a project that really doesn't suit the site that they're proposing it for. I also went to the library and I went to the walking bridge, and I had a petition with me to talk to different people who are utilizing the downtown area right now. And the petition, I feel like, is very reasonable. And I got over 130 signatures on my petition in just a few hours' time. It just states that we want a development with the following attributes: 2 stories with architecture that matches the neighborhood, a density ratio consistent with city ordinances, sufficient parking for all residents plus guests, no retail, a ban on ever having a liquor store or bar inside the development, no closure of Indiana Avenue, no seating of the Triangle Park on Riverside Avenue, on Riverside south of Indiana Avenue, and no width reduction on Indiana Avenue. I would just tell you that the people, I hardly had any people who refused to sign the petition. Almost all the people who were initially hesitant said, okay, I'll definitely sign that. I don't feel like what you're asking for is unreasonable. And I would agree with that. I don't think anybody in the neighborhood is saying that this property should not be developed. I think we're just looking for something reasonable to happen on it. And I forgot what my third point was going to be, but can I submit these to somebody?
Sure, you can give it to staff.
Okay.
Martha.
Well, I want to thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the comments. Is there anybody else who would like to come up and speak?
I'm Mark Shilsky. I live on Wingate Road in St. Charles, and that's a very tough act to follow. So I don't know why I'm coming up after her, but she pretty much said all the points. I think, you know, as you talk to the residents and the people in the neighborhood and the concerns, and she hit it dead on. I mean, there's a lot of things you come in, call it what it is. We know what it is. I mean, this isn't beautification of the city. It's not to further value the residents and offer more value. It's revenue for the developer. That's what a high-density apartment complex is. And I'm not saying that, I'm not faulting him for that. I mean, to my knowledge, he's not a charity or a nonprofit, so he has a right to do that, but it's also a responsibility to the city and its residents and the people you serve in the community to stand up for them and value what they have too. And I think a lot of people look at this as development, it's property, it's investment, but these are people's homes. I grew up in this town. My grandparents were immigrants. They came here, started a family. My dad who's here tonight, he was born in the house that he lives in. I mean, literally born in the den that he lives in. These are people's lives. Twice I've heard comments now, last meeting and this meeting, asking the Hearst if they've gone through the neighborhood and talked to the residents. My comment and I guess request to the city council is the city council should get out, go on the property with the residents, talk to them, hear their side of it. It's easy to make a decision about something, oh, we'll put up a big building because it doesn't affect you. But if you talk to them and you see how it impacts their lives, and on the other thing earlier tonight, you talked about quality of life. That's exactly what you're talking about here. Does anyone really walk outside of your house tomorrow, stand on the sidewalk and picture even a 3-story building right across the street from your house? And then, you know, we already have a very, very good family who put their house up for sale strictly because of this proposal. And they don't want to be here with a high-rise building and, you know, thinking, oh, we'll ask for 5, we'll settle for 4 or 50 feet. And it's still, I mean, think of the ethics. You put your house up for sale, are you going to tell the people that are coming to look at your house, oh, by the way, they're going to build a 50-story building right there, a 50-foot building? I mean, that's going to hurt the property value, so don't tell me this is increasing the value of the neighborhood. You know, I think a lot of people, I've lived in this town, like I said, my whole life. A lot of people love this community. They move here, they settle here, they want to raise their families. They grow up here, they stay here. It's from the residents and the people who live here. The people make the town, the city doesn't make the people. And that's something we have to remember. So I really request that, you know, you talk to the residents, go on their property, meet with them, and look at all sides of it, and then come up with a solution that works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any more comments from the audience?
Yeah, 2 comments and a statement.
Okay.
I'd just like to respond to...
Please state your name and your address.
Greg Taylor. I have one of the letters in your package, 211 South 3rd. And someone made a comment about them living in the neighborhood, but they're not going to live east of this development, right? No. They're going to live with a beautiful view of the river. Don't blame them. I would like to live there too. Not east of this development, looking at this huge property. So that really doesn't apply, that they're concerned about how this is going to look because they're going to live in our neighborhood. They're not going to live in our neighborhood. Second of all, comparing the Baker and the West Side developments to this site in this historic neighborhood with 2-story buildings, trying to find an appropriate size, that's ludicrous. It's just crazy in terms of appropriate size for a neighborhood. I think Martha made a point that even though it says it's 50 feet, who came up with that? I challenge you to step back and re-examine that. So this is the 3rd committee meeting I've been to. And my fear is that our efforts and concerns expressed during these meetings don't matter. My fear is that behind the scenes negotiations are happening between the city and the developer that's going to determine the outcome of this development, mostly independent of these hearings. During the Historic Preservation Committee, feedback was given and none of it was positive. That's an overstatement. 60% of it was negative. But here we are today, again, looking at this overreach proposal. I challenge the committee, the city, and the developers to step back from the strategic plan and ask yourself, do we really want a 4 or 5-story apartment complex that sits in an historic district in a historic residential neighborhood as our gateway building to downtown St. Charles on the south side? Do we really want that? Who would think that an apartment complex is a gateway building to the downtown? I can't think of anyone. I would think that's appropriate, especially in a historic neighborhood. Besides being an architectural eyesore as proposed and not consistent with the historic neighborhood it would sit in, the development as proposed would strain the already overburdened parking, as we already talked about, already mentioned, and the water treatment capabilities, resulting in a lower quality of life for all of the residents in the River East neighborhood. As it was said by the developer and someone today on the committee, you don't get a lot of chances to develop a property. This is a 50, 100-year opportunity here, so let's get this right, you know? I'm certain that the city and the developer can come up with a plan that can act as an economic engine, can beautify the neighborhood, not tower over the rest of us in the neighborhood, not strain the already overburdened parking and water treatment capabilities, and be the proper fitting gateway to the downtown. Only if you insist on it. You know, only if you insist that it has to meet all of these needs. And I'm confident all of these needs can be met. It's just that we just need you guys to step up to the plate and the developers to step up to the plate and do something that really benefits all of us. So I hope that's the case. I hope that my fear is that all these meetings are really for nothing and this thing's going to get rammed through because of all the great things that they've done already. Let's just step back, rethink this. We're not going to have another chance, another 50 to 100 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to address something that you said when you made your first comment. You made mention that you feel as though the city and the developer are, working behind the scenes to do something?
I fear it.
You fear it?
Yeah, and you know what? That was a common comment. I was out there, too, getting the petitions, too, and it's not just me. That was a common comment we got from people when we were signing it. They were like, yeah, good luck. But when there's money involved, tax dollars involved, sometimes it really just doesn't matter what we think. And that was not an uncommon comment. And that is what I fear.
I just wanted to just make you well aware that we would never do that within the city, and I think it's somewhat disrespectful to staff in the city to think that there would be any of that going on. And obviously, the developer has the right to make proposals. This is a conceptual plan, so we can all make comments on it, so they're just going through the process. Obviously, we respect everyone's comments. We're all separately, individually elected. We all represent different wards, so we are listening. This is just a process that it has to happen.
Sure, it's a fear, and it's not just a fear of mine, it's a fear of other people, and it was repeated multiple times when we were getting signatures on the petition. I just want you to know.
Thank you, I appreciate your comment.
Okay.
Is there any more comments tonight? No? Well, go ahead, sir, sorry.
I'm Robert Carter. I live at 217 South 3rd Avenue, and I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to listen in on all this and learn everybody's names. I just want to say that all of you have been elected, as you just mentioned, and as a property owner and a citizen, I agree with Greg that we only have you to look out for our interests. And I want you to take that to heart and realize that a lot of people feel that they're being overrun by contractors. It might be wrong, but it is an opinion. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any more public comment?
Sorry, I just wanted to make an addendum to my earlier comment, Diane Morton, South 10th Avenue. And that is one word, parking. There is not enough parking as it is in St. Charles, even with that, I think it's 4-story building across, you know, on the west side. My husband and I, from 10th Avenue, if we want to go downtown on the weekend, we will walk. We do not bother trying to find a place to park the car because there usually isn't one. That tower gets full, on-street parking gets full. So if we're going to go pick up dinner at Szechuan Restaurant, we will walk there or bicycle. We do not walk, we do not try to park downtown. And this will add a lot more residents and not anywhere near enough parking. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment?
Hi, my name is Dan Swenson. I live at 504 South 3rd Avenue. I'd just like to echo the concerns about parking. And we've heard it again and again, and everybody's aware of it, but parking in downtown St. Charles is tight. We live on the end of 3rd Avenue where it terminates into Riverside. And on dates of city festivals, Scarecrow Festival, Fine Arts, 4th of July fireworks, even on nights when the bars are busy and the Arcada has a sold-out show, parking is all the way to the end of 3rd Avenue. That's getting to be a ways from the downtown area. And that's without throwing what I think is probably a fair estimate of another 100 vehicles associated with a residential complex of this size into that mix. I just think the parking would be a big problem with a residence of this size. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more public comment? Seeing none. Hopefully, there's been a lot of feedback for Frontier Development. You know, we hopefully you're respecting all the residents and the comments that were made, and you know, obviously you have the right to keep moving forward with this, and we'll see how this progresses. Thank you. With that, I see no reason for any additional business tonight. No reason for an executive session. Can I please have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting? So moved. Moved by Alderman Bancroft.
Second.
Seconded by Brian Wirball. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.